right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. Today, we are talking to Smitha Gunturi, and are you? Well, let me say welcome. You are very cheerful. You are very excited and happy. I'm always glad to see that.
Thank you. Yes, I am.
Are you always like that, or is that
Yes.
something you're always like that?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to have to start your diet or something, because that's.
Sure.
So anyway, we are going to be talking about some serious things today, and not that this is going to be a unpleasant thing to listen to. It's a story of hope. It's a story of recovery. But anytime we touch on sensitive issues, I always say for anybody who is a survivor, there is a possibility that we could hit some trigger points today. So, you use your best judgment as if you want to continue listening, and we hope that you do. But if you don't, we certainly understand. Let me give Smitha's introduction here, and she provided me with some information. And this is pretty much the podcast. I could just read this, and there's the podcast. There it is.
That's why I told you, like, you can edit it depending on how much you wanted to say.
Once I read this, everybody knows everything. Okay, here we go. I'm joking, of course. Being a single mom working in IT, that is fantastic. And in the corporate world for the last 18 years, Smitha hopes to provide insight and bring new light to conversation around other people's journeys and the lessons she has learned. Thus, she started the Journey podcast, and she has on there guests with similar walks of life to her own, focusing on subjects such as child sexual abuse, domestic violence, haunted relationship, rape, child loss, suicidal thoughts, and lone parenting. Those are some heavy topics. There's kind of a lot to sort through there. And as far as some of the things that have happened to Smitha, some of the more sensitive things, she does detail this on one episode of her podcast. So we're not going to delve into that too much today. We do have to glaze on it just to give the audience perspective, but a very heartfelt episode. That's a powerful episode that you have on there, and I will put that in the show notes for people.
Sure.
Let's kind of start from the beginning. I always ask this question. Where are you from?
I'm from India. Before I get into the details, first I want to say I love your voice. It sounds so good when you're hearing it on the podcast or even here face to face right now.
Oh, well, thank you.
That is awesome.
That's very nice to hear.
Yes, thank you for inviting me here and having me as a guest and letting me talk on whatever I feel to with whatever the relevant topic that you wanted to give it to your audience. Yes, I'm from India, to answer to your question.
Your early days, brothers and sisters.
Brothers, I have only one brother, an elder one. He's settled in California at the moment. More than 25 years he's here.
Okay, that's fantastic. It's good to have. I was an only child, and I've been told by my wife and other women that I have what's called only child syndrome. I like things like in my office to stay where I put them. But
I can totally relate to that, seeing my son right now.
But other than that, I have to say I kind of feel that I lost something by not having a brother or sister. I think that even the death of my parents, if I had somebody to share that with, I feel, that's just the way it works out sometimes. As I mentioned, you do chronicle some of the details of the abuse that happened to you as a child. And that's probably where you have a number of negative things that you've gone through, some things that have impacted you. That's probably the first series of things. Yes. As I recall, they were people that were in proximity to your family. There was a neighbor, and there was also a distant relative of some kind. these things are very stealth. I kind of feel that a lot of times when talking to people and they hear these stories, well, why didn't they say something? Why didn't they just? And it generally doesn't happen like that.
Yes.
It's not like one day's everything's fine and the next day the neighbor jumps at you from behind the bushes and pulls. It doesn't happen that way.
Yes, it doesn't.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of how that kind of abuse begins?
If I recall Kevin's words, there is a grooming happening, or like the grooming will happen before the actual starting of this kind of an episode.
Yes.
I have a distant person that was living in the same place that I was living. Our homes were like multi-dwelling homes kind of area that was in the same compound. We live in different portions of the place. And there was a person living upstairs is one, and there was a person like in the next door for us. It started for them to call me and just like, hey, I want to talk to you. Or like, yeah, I was like, what, 7 or 8 year old kid, and they just wanted to play is what they told me.
Right.
The person was like around 55-year-old or like, yeah, 55 plus something. So when they started calling me or like that, I always like go around and keep playing in the same compound. When they call me for it, yes, I'm going there and sitting and keep talking or like, yeah, playing whatever they wanted to play.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is like snake and ladder, something like that, a board game or something, just sitting with them continuously. And yeah, once it started in the sense like they'll pick up like and kiss me on the cheek or something like that.
Sure.
When that kind of a touch felt odd in the very first days itself, I actually went back to my parents and said them, hey, this is kind of feeling odd because my dad does it. My dad kisses me. Yeah, it never
Yeah.
felt odd. Or like, yeah, even we live in a giant family. Even the other uncles or like anybody within our family, when they does it, it never felt odd. When it felt odd in a different way, though I explained it, it never helped. So the grooming process was not, as you just mentioned, it is not like, yeah, one day just pulling you in and then start doing it. It was like a chronic time period that they actually like made me comfortable. It's not comfortable, I have to use a word, but yes, they made me in a way like, yes, I can trust them. Whatever they are doing to me is nothing wrong.
Right.
Because it was not introduced one time. It was introduced over a period of time that them like, yeah, taking me and putting me in their lap or like, yeah, kissing me on the cheek, and then a little more than that after a little bit. And then, yeah, it gradually increased a bit. But yeah, that's what the process is with anybody. So if a child is coming to you and tell you like, yeah, they are not comfortable even to give a hug to any person, listen to them.
Yeah.
Stop that at that time itself. You don't have to force them saying, hey, this is your uncle, you have to give, or like, this is your aunt, you have to go. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter whoever that is. It's your job to protect the child. Listen to them, and there is nothing happening if they don't hug anybody.
Right.
So yes, that's how it happened.
Yeah, you had mentioned, and I thought this was pretty profound in terms of the impact on you. You mentioned in your podcast that you don't, when you hear people say they're going to take a trip or whatever, and we're letting the kids stay over at so and so, and they're going to have a great time. I would say most of the time that's probably a fairly harmless thing to do. I grew up in an era where we were all over the neighborhood all day long. We didn't have cell phones, and a lot of times our parents didn't know where we were for hours on end. And that was the way things were back then. And I would say most of the time that's fine, but occasionally that can spell disaster. And you say that you speak in a very cautionary way about just dumping your kids off somewhere and going somewhere. You have a problem with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that triggers me a lot because it's just not with me, with other couple of friends. I have heard the same kind of scenarios. They did not had what I had to that extent, but at least they had the discomfort situations to them. It's not like anything really sexually abusive, but they're not really comfortable being with other people. Might be it is like the other person might be way too controlling on whatever they does. They don't want them to sit here, stand there, do not touch these items, anything, doesn't matter. So when I keep hearing that, it triggers me a lot. Like, why do we need to leave our kids somewhere? Yes, I totally agree. Like, yeah, 90%, 95%, or even 99% of the times, it might be safe for the kids to leave them with the known person. But at the same time, you need to understand the patterns are even the other person when you are leaving. For me, when I said, like, yeah, it happened with a couple of known people, the other two people that were involved with me were my own uncles. They live with me in my house. So though my parents trusted them to take care of us, me and my brother, it happened to me. So end of the day, you never know how to identify that person when they are doing something like this to your child. So I would always say, like, be really cautious.
Yeah.
For the first time, second time, keep talking to your kid, have that open dialogue. As long as the kid is comfortable in talking everything that happened in that house with you, yes, fine.
Yeah.
But how far these kids are really open, or how far you are having that kind of a dialogue with them? Are you really opening up to talk to an extent, like, okay, are you discomfort with anything in that house, or are you like really okay with everything happened there? If you have that level of communication established with kids, yes, that should always be fine.
Yeah.
But again, I don't see that level of communication with every parent to with every child. So
That's
that
very
triggers.
true. Yeah, I would have to say that's a very valid point that I'm not sure I ever considered so many times. That, hey, I'm going over to George's and his parents' house or whatever, and a lot of times there isn't that. I would say maybe that preface, maybe that pre-talk that, if something happens that's out of the ordinary, don't discard it. Tell me right away. There's no
Yes,
shame in telling me. You get touched in a way that you don't feel comfortable under any sort, whether it's sexual or just being disciplined or whatever. You make sure you tell me that right away. And a lot
absolutely.
of times, and two, sometimes too, I believe parents, just because of the fact I'm childless, and then one of the things I talk about is there's this getting to be a certain age and not being married and not having kids. There's a certain stigma attached to that, and that's a whole nother subject for a different day. But my point is that parents sometimes feel anyone who has a child has been engraced with love, and they're next to sainthood, and just because somebody has kids does not mean that they're any better than anybody else
Absolutely.
when it comes to being around kids. And sometimes parents are too trusting of other parents. That's what I'm trying to say, simply by virtue of the fact that they have
Yes.
kids, and it
Yes.
means virtually nothing in
Yes.
terms of what kind of person they are. It means absolutely nothing. Just because they can procreate does not make them any better than anybody else.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I think here again, parents are just way too trusting of other parents simply by virtue of the fact that their kids go to school with their kids or whatever. And that means those associations mean nothing.
Yes.
So I think I think you bring up a very valid point in terms of having a good relationship with your child, having some uncomfortable discussions, which a lot of parents don't like to have, and knowing that they should have boundaries. And if those boundaries
Yes.
are violated in any way, do you want to follow up with that any? I know you have your own thoughts on that.
Yes, as long as the boundary is also like it shouldn't be a boundary where your kid is not able to talk on certain topic. It should be a boundary where they should understand what is their limitations doing certain things. If they just wanted to go out and have fun with friends, yes, that doesn't need a boundary. But where they are going, what kind of a fun they are having, need to have a boundary. So
Yes.
first, as the parent, first we need to understand what we wanted to open up with them, or like give that space for them. If they can, even if they are like falling into a wrong pattern or like wrong situations with any friends, sometimes the kid will be like scared to explain that to us.
Mm-hmm.
A simple example I can say, like, if they just break any cup or a glass at house, the minute they just do it, they'll be scared, they don't want to tell it. But if you give them a space or understanding that I'm not going to hurt you, instead I'm going to teach you. Like, I'm going to let you know what is good, what is bad, and that will make you understand and choose what do you want to do. If you can have that communication established with them, I don't think there will be any problem at all. I have that sort of thing with my son, because of course it's my own experience that I had gone through.
Sure.
So I let him talk to me about anything, absolutely anything. Today, he doesn't have any kind of restrictions about any topic to talk to me.
Yes.
Be it his bodily changes, it doesn't matter. Or like, when his puberty hit, he spoke about everything to me. Of course, I'm the only one here, one parent. So yes, he has to share that with them. But usually the way we look at it is like, it's a girl child talking to a father is not that great. Or like, it's a boy child talking to mother is not that great. No. If you really give that space and understanding for the kid, anytime parent is a parent, regardless of what gender it is, and kid is a kid. So yes, we can establish that with the kids.
Very good. As you moved on, after these horrible childhood incidents happened and you moved into adolescence, I'm kind of curious. Eventually, you did get into an abusive relationship. I'm kind of curious in that transition period, when we go through the early stages of dating, finding out what we like, what we don't like. That trauma had to have had, and I'm guessing, some sort of a negative impact on how you evaluated what you might call normal relationships. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that affected your adolescence?
Yes. My childhood sexual abuse or whatever, those incidents extended up to 17 or so. And we don't have a concept called dating or anything back home. In India, we don't have that concept at all. But again, my ex-husband back then was my classmate. We both went to the same school, same college, not school, actually college. And yes, I met him there. He was continuously expressing his interest on me, though I know that I'm not interested. Once he was there in my life, things at home started to change in a different, I can put it in a different way. Like, though we don't have a concept of dating, wherever I used to go, this guy used to follow me. Though I tell him like, yeah, I'm not interested in you, he just kept pursuing continuously. When my own family understood that there is some other guy following me or like watching me 24/7, the leverage that these guys were having at house was gone. So they were not touching me. That made me feel like, yes, this is the safe space that I was trying to look for all these years, because nobody is physically touching me or like coming near me for any reason.
Yeah.
So I did not explain my husband, yes, this is the reason that I am going to talk to you or anything. But I did tell him before the marriage, like, hey, I know that you are interested in me, but trust me, I'm not really in love with you. But if you give me a chance, once we are married, probably I'll start learning to love you. If you are okay with it, probably we can go ahead and get married. So that's what he took, and he came back to my parents to talk about, like, yes, I wanted to ask you a girl's hand. Are you guys okay with it? So that's how we got married. But yeah, things went south afterwards. But yes, that is how I actually got into my marriage, or like looking into that kind of a relationship at all.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and I want to be very careful not to offend, but simply to understand. Like, you talked about the dating culture,
Yes.
where you came from and so forth. I don't know that the idea of romance, as it is in American culture, which is everyone is it's so stressed that you have to be in love, and it has to be this emotional thing that has to be there. And a lot of times in other cultures, it's more of a practical union of some kind.
Yes.
So these standards into which a lot of people might think that's foreign, but the standards are not the same all around the world in terms of what makes the best marriage. It's not always a Harlequin romance. So,
Yes.
okay. Was there any pressure in your culture or even in your particular situation, that the man has some sort of advantage in terms of how he dictates the relationship goes?
Yes, obviously, or like definitely, and obviously for me, for my culture, from where I came in, I should say obviously, but here it is like, yes, they do have an upper hand in the relationship. Even though my husband came to our home to ask my hand, once both the parties agreed, like, yes, we will have this marriage arranged, but it goes by everything what they ask, be it my husband or be it his parents, doesn't matter. So whatever they ask should be done in the marriage. So the girls or the girl's family will never have an upper hand in that.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's how it goes.
You mentioned this grooming, and I have found that generally that's a pretty common thing, regardless of the people involved or their relationships. The grooming in terms of abuse in a marriage, I hear again often it doesn't start the day after the wedding. There's the little things, getting control of the finances, checking your cell phone for messages, little things like that. It just keeps growing and growing until that control happens, and then and then the abuse sets in. Was that the case with you? How quickly did you realize that you were in an abusive situation?
This might sound funny, but on the day of my marriage, uh, we got married in the morning time around like 9:30, I believe. So by end of that day, around 6 o'clock in the evening, we vacated the altar and we were like, yeah, leaving to house. My husband called me in and he said, like, without being in love with me, you made me roam around you for like 6 years. I waited for you for 6 years, and you never admitted that you loved me. And even now, you never said that you are in love with me, or like, I never used the phrase like, I love you for him at all.
Right.
So his question was like, you were never there. You were never interested in me, but you still got married to me. I don't know whatever the reasons behind the scene that you wanted to get married to me, but now you are at my foot. I'll show you what life is.
Wow. Okay.
So with that itself, I know that's not going to go in a better way. But what I try to do from my end is like, okay, I will not have any other way anyways, because I felt myself like, yes, I'm a broken piece. I don't have my family support, because though abuse was happening, though I mentioned them numerous times, not once, not twice, when I was like 16, 17-year old, when my uncle was doing it, I don't really care about telling who that is. My dad's brother, he was doing it with me. And when I went back to my dad, because that's not new, or like that's not something that I don't understand at that age, I do understand what's happening. So I went back to my father to tell him, like, Dad, your brother is actually like trying to get unnecessary things with me. He's touching me really hard.
Yeah.
Even before I complete that sentence, my dad stopped me and he warned me, saying, you watch your mouth on what you're talking to me. You're talking about my brother, and my brother is a pastor. He's a church pastor, and he was
Yeah.
looked up like as if he himself is a god in the town.
Yeah.
So everybody looked up to him so well. And if I'm trying to mention something like this about such kind of a person, my dad was in total denial. He don't even want to complete a sentence from me. He don't even want to listen to that.
Yeah.
So having that situation at house, when my husband, though he said like, yeah, this is how your life is going to be, I don't have a choice. I can't really go back to my family because there is nothing for me there. So I started building myself in a way to show to my husband whatever that perfect wife that he is looking for. I started changing day by day for what he is looking for. So if he says to me like, yes, I don't want you to wear certain kind of a dress, I stopped using that. If he tell me like, you should not be eating something, I don't eat that. If he says like, yeah, you should not come out of this room or like this house, I never did that. I was put into that situation without leaving house even for more than a year and a half. I never stepped out of my main door at all.
Wow.
So I did everything that I can just to give him that idea, like, okay, it's not something that I don't want to love you, but I'm still trying. You need to actually show me that love for me to give it to you.
Yes.
If you keep pushing me to a corner all the time and controlling so much on everything that I do, there is nothing that I can actually come out and show you.
Yeah.
So that's how it is.
Yeah, it sounds to me like being that the comment was made so early, he felt that you essentially entered into a contract. And once you signed on the dotted line,
Yes.
that's it. And that's very that has to be a terrible situation to be in. And as this went on, there had to come a time when you realized that an interaction, an emotional interaction where, as you say, he showed love, maybe gave you some aspects of love that you never understood or felt before. Instead of doing that, it was channeled into control. There had to be a time. Obviously, you're living such a good life now. There had to come a time when you said, "I'm out of here." And that is very difficult, even in American culture. I have been around a lot of nonprofit groups and so forth, where they are not only under the psychological control of abuse, but they're under financial control. They're under a lot of times physical threats. They don't have a family with a big muscular dad that can come in and rescue them. Their options are very limited.
Yes.
And I would have to say that in a very in a culture or in a system of families, that sometimes people have these little subcultures, going against the man in any way that puts even added imprisonment, for lack of a better term. Your options become even more limited. I'm very curious how you broke through all that.
Two instances really stand out for me is one, physical abuse. He beat me up so bad. I was carrying a 5.5-month-old baby, and that was after my son right now. It was like 1 year, 2 months difference. I was 5.5 months old. He beat me so bad. The kid inside me, the 5.5 months pregnancy inside me, passed away.
Oh.
I did not even realize that it passed away. After my bruises came down, I went to the hospital to check in, like, how am I doing? That's when doctor told me, like, I have to go for an emergency abortion. I asked, like, why am I going for an emergency abortion right now? Is there something wrong with my kid? And they said, the kid passed away more than a week ago, but I don't know how you are still alive. And that moment broke me in different levels. So I told them, like, I don't want to give birth to this guy's kids anymore. So I don't want kids anymore at all. So when you're doing when you're performing this abortion, I wanted to get my tubectomy surgery done at the same time. I am not becoming a mother again because I can't protect my own child. So that was the moment which broke. And what I felt at that moment was like, if I'm sitting inside the house because of this guy and keep crying forever, things will never get better. So I enrolled back into school. Though he did not like it, I told him, like, I'm not going to go to college. I can manage that with online classes or whatever that I can do. So I just need to go to school. I'm like super bored sitting inside the house, is how I put it to him.
Yeah.
Since I'm not stepping out of the house, he was fine. So I completed my master's at the time. And I started applying for job. Even before I completed my master's, I passed out with a high score. So I got the job offered to me directly. So since he understood the benefits of that financial thing that is going to come through me, he was like, okay, you can go and join this job. But he is the one who drops me, picks me up, and he can walks into my office anytime he wants. And everything was like under his control even then.
Yes.
So he was fine with it because he's getting money too, and he can do anything he wants. So that's how I went. I took the first step. But again, to break that pattern, or like to break to an extent where I don't want to live with him, is when my son was 8 years old, where I was like, I grown my career a lot. I was to a point that he cannot touch me physically. And I'm like very well known at my office or any other places. And I was able to get my visa to come to US. So everything turned out to be he's dependent on me financially. It came to that level.
Okay.
He was never even like close to what I'm earning. So at that point of time, he understood that he cannot touch me physically because it will be known really soon out that he cannot control. He started beating my son.
Oh, geez.
He started putting my son to spy on me in a way like, yeah, if I take any meeting call, my son should go back and report to him saying like, yes, mom had this long of a call and she was talking to a guy or a girl, or like, this is how she spoke, this is the topic, or like, this is the body language she did, whatever the nonsense that he wanted to hear. But my son is not that smart enough to talk about any of it. He's a really blank and innocent kid. So
Yeah.
he couldn't really say anything. So he was getting beaten. And the way he was beating him is also like, you are never going to tell your mother going back that I'm actually asking you these things or I'm beating you.
Yeah.
The minute I understand that you are actually going back and telling this to your mother, I'm going to kill both of you in your sleep. So for that child at 7 or 8 years old, he was like scared to death. He never spoke to me about anything. But one day, as I said, like I saw a remote control imprint back on my son's back. When I wanted him to change his dress or something, he was like, no, I'm not doing anything. I just pulled him towards me, and he was. I asked him like, I wanted to hug and ask him like, what's going on with you? And he squealed a little odd, and I made him to remove his shirt and saw the remote imprint on the back. Then I asked him like, what's going on? He don't want to talk anything. He closed my mouth so hard, and he's also not making any noise, but he was crying. I asked like, okay, I'm not going to talk here. We'll talk about this again. The next day morning, I went to drop him. Usually my husband was the one who was dropping him and picking him from the school because my husband wasn't working. He was completely home. So I told him like, I'm going to go to my office early today. So I'm going to drop my son in the school. While I was driving, I asked my son like, what's actually going on? Then he started crying and he said like, mom, this is what is happening. He's asking me questions every day, and if I ever tell you, he's going to kill both of us, and I'm scared now that we are going to be killed by him. And he also added at the time like, mom, if you think that I need a father, do you think that he is the one? Can we walk out? I'm really scared. Can we walk out? That gave me a breaking point, and I felt like, okay, I have to make changes to whatever the level it has to be. And the only reason for at that moment, I feel like even now I feel like the only reason I'm alive is to take care of my son. If I'm not doing that in a proper way that it is meant to be, then what's the point of it? So yeah, that's my breaking point to step out. That day evening when I picked him, I did not go back home. I actually left town. We both lived on the street for a day and a half. Another friend gave us a call just to check on us normally, like, yeah, what are you guys doing on this weekend? They realized that I'm not home, and they did not ask me any question, but they said like, just share your location wherever you are. Though I was living in California, Fremont, I was almost outskirts of LA at the time. I started just driving, took my son off, and I started driving. I parked myself in a big mall parking lot. And for the whole night, I was there in the parking lot. The next morning, they gave a call to me asking, like, where are you? What are you doing for the weekend? I did not tell them anything, but by my location, they understood, like, I'm in the outskirts of LA. Some riverside or something, that is the place. They did not ask me any question. They kind of understood something is going on with me, but they booked a hotel room wherever I was in that place. They said like, yeah, I booked the hotel room for the weekend for you for the 2 days. You just go stay there. If you're okay to come back, or else like give us a call back so that we'll do whatever we can.
Okay.
Those 2 days gave me a break to really think. I did not pick up the call. I switched off the phone. I gave the hotel number for them. They are the one who actually booked us, so they already have the hotel number and the room number. So they were like, yeah, if at all we need to be in touch with you, we'll give a call to the landline of hotel. So I switched off my phone. I disconnected from the entire world. Those 2 days of that calmness, or like whatever the time you wanted to call, gave me what I have to do in my future, how I wanted to really take this out. So I re-energized myself. I came back. I packed all my things from the house. He was there right in front of me. He couldn't understand what I was doing. I did not even care. I just packed off everything. And then he was like, "What is happening with you? You were not even home for past 2 days." I said, "I don't want to. I just wanted to relax. I wanted to go out. I went. That's all." And he was like, "Okay, then I'm actually going out. I'll come back after a bit." He went out. I packed all my things. I took another apartment for lease. I moved there. It was very close by, but again, I don't want him to be on my lease at all. So
Right.
as long as you are not legally in the lease, you cannot walk inside the house. So yeah, that's what I wanted to start with. I did. I packed all his things wherever he said he's going. I took all his things there. I left it on the doorstep of whatever the place he was living in. I gave him a call and said, "All your things are packed. I left it at the doorstep wherever you said that you are going to be. I'm not even sure whether you're inside there or not, but your things are there. Ask anybody to pick up, or like you can pick up by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm leaving. I'm leaving with my son, and do whatever you wanted to."
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I actually came out.
That's fantastic. I'm going to take it that you've had few problems for the most part since you parted ways.
Yes, it was not an easy thing. Anytime that I shift my house to a different apartment, less than 2 hours, he'll knock my door and say, "Don't think that you escaped from me. I still know where you are living." Even today, I know that he'll be following.
Really?
Yes. For years, I know that he was following because once in a while he'll send me a package or like pictures of my son that were taken on my phone after I left him. I don't know how he'll get hang of them. I have no idea whether he hacks or anything.
Yeah.
But yes, he does a lot of things behind the scene. Yes.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope that either that subsides or that you find a way to through the legal system or what have you to keep that, because that's no way anyone should live.
I tried actually. I went for restraining order. Though usually restraining order is valid only for 1 year, with whatever the proofs are that I was able to produce to them, I got the restraining order right for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
With that disconnection completely, yeah, he never came back. Once in a while, he wrote an email that he was missing my son. In that period, after that, there was nothing absolutely.
Okay.
I know that since he is my classmate, there are friends that are common to both of us.
Sure.
He still talks to them, complaining on me that I left him or whatever. But I never went for legal divorce up until my son was 18, because my son's only request was he never wanted to go as a custody battle if something is happening. He don't want to see his father at all. The way my son mentions is like, I never wanted to see that person at all.
Mm-hmm.
So he even calls him like that person. He never says like dad or like father or anything. So with his request, I felt like, I mean, there is nothing that I have to rush for a legal divorce at the moment. So I just left it.
Yeah.
On my son's 18th birthday, he got the divorce application. He gave it to my hand and he said, like, "It's a long due, Mom. I know that you are waiting for this. And I made you to wait for this long. Thank you for waiting. And now it is time for you to sign up."
Yeah.
That's when.
There's one more key thing that I want to ask you. You talk about, when we hear the word freedom, we usually have a positive feeling.
Yes.
And we kind of envision a dog that has broken loose of the chain and he's running through the field and he's happy. But freedom doesn't always come like that.
Yes.
And you talk about a fear of freedom.
Yes.
Just can you give us an idea of what you mean by that?
In your example, just say if a dog is really happy that was actually chained up, yes, it will run all around the place. But if the dog only knows the owner beating it, or like it never left the cage out at all, even if you leave the door at that point of time, dog does not know to walk out of that place.
Mm-hmm.
You see some videos in YouTube where the dog never walked in the grass because of abusive, whatever the owner is or anything. Even if you leave that on a grass, it doesn't know how to stand. It doesn't know how to walk or anything. That is the fear that I was having, because I was in a closed door for so long. Even the dress that I wear was selected by him for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like even even by my parents or whatever, that controlling place that I was in back home or like in my marriage or anything, all of a sudden I was let loose. Even if I go to a mall and wanted to select a dress to me, I have to look around and see like if anybody is going to be there to select
Yeah.
for me. So I
Mhm.
don't know how to do that for me. So it was really hard for me to learn each and every bit of it, thinking like, yes, I have to take control of my life. There is nobody else for me to, but be it a freedom or control, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of time for us to adjust to that new circumstances, to adopt that and go forward.
Yeah.
So yes.
We are talking to Smitha, and the podcast is called the Journey Podcast. And listening to you, we talked about the length of the program. I could probably do a series of podcasts with you because there's so much to talk about. And I for anyone who, my day job, I'm involved with people who a lot of times are recovering from mental health, or they're recovering from addiction. And we have to stress to them that recovery is possible, because so often they feel that it is not, that the only way that
Yes.
it's going to end is if they die. And that's simply not the case. And I find that dynamic to be present with people who are in abusive situations, or who are in ugly situations. They feel that there is no way out. And I would say that just like recovery is always possible, that freedom is also possible.
Yes.
So I'll leave you with a chance to just speak briefly about what hope and inspiration you would have for somebody who's maybe in that situation, or they have a family member who is, and they may not realize that there is a way out. They just, what inspiration would you have for someone to just tell them that there is a way over the fence?
More than an inspiration, I would say like be practical to you, to your situation. It took 25 years for me, or even more than 25 years for me, to step out of and face my fear of freedom, or like even to adapt it and move forward with what I have to actually do. It might take only 25 days for you. Even in my article, that's what I mentioned. Like it took 25 years for me, it might take only 25 days for you. But that first step is the hardest step.
Yeah.
People are so afraid of change. We always talk about like, yeah, change, I have to change something, I have to do this, I have to do that. Or else even like a basic example, I wanted to change how I look, but I'm not interested to get up in the morning and to hit the gym.
Mm-hmm.
The first few days or first step of deciding, yes, you have to go to gym or you have to like better your diet, is going to be harder part, the first few days, because there are so many unknowns that you are afraid of. You don't know what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
This abuse, or like whatever the situations you are in, as we spoke before, it is not happening to you overnight. It was slowly introduced to you over a course of period. You are used to that. That's why
Yeah.
you are okay to be in the same place. I always use a phrase like comfortable being uncomfortable. Though you are
Mm-hmm.
not comfortable, you stay there as if you are like happy or whatever you wanted to call that.
Yes.
But if you really wanted a change, make that first step. What if you cross the boundary? There is nothing that you are going to lose. If you are going to fail the first step, you are still going to be in the place that you started. You're not going to go anywhere from that. Nothing is changing from there. But if you are successful from the first step that you have taken, the confidence level that you get, the taste of that freedom, or the taste of the hope that you are getting is enormous. You will actually run behind that afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That would be your first step, and you'll never look back. So try to
Yes.
do that. That's all I'll say.
That's it. It's one of those things. It's a simple concept, but it is
Yes.
very hard to accomplish. And it's
Yes.
just a matter of finding the strength to do it. That's a whole nother topic that I would like to discuss with you maybe at another time. But anyway, we're talking about the Journey podcast. And the host is our guest, Smitha Gunturi. And what are the places online, social media, and so on and so forth that people can find out about your podcast and about you in general, your social media and all these other things?
My Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all of them are Smitha Gunturi. Instagram is smitha.gunturi, but yes, I think you can find with Smitha Gunturi as well. I believe so. But yes, all of the socials are Smitha Gunturi. My YouTube channel is Journey Podcast. The banner would be Journey Podcast with Smitha.
Okay, great. Smitha, I'm not sure where to start. Like I said, you're always welcome here. And I'd always, anytime you have an idea or something that you would like to do, be sure to contact me. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for the kind words you had for me at the beginning. And they mean so much.
I was about to say that again, actually. Keep talking.
Well, thank you. I always tell people that I have a face for radio. That's what I always tell people.
You have voice for radio, actually.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to hear. And it means a lot because in this business here, you know, people throw stones at you. You don't get into the voice business, the radio business, if you have a thin skin. Anybody can just say, I don't like you. You're not the sound that we're looking for, and you're out the door, you know. So it's always great to hear. Thank you so much. And for those listening, to let everyone know, you can pretty much find me anywhere on social media using the name Billy Dees. I would say Twitter is kind of my social media home. I have links to other things in my Twitter bio. And you can find me on Twitter at Billy Dees. And we'll have another episode coming up for you next week. And I can't thank Smitha enough. You're absolutely delightful because you have this pleasant, outgoing personality, but you also have this incredible backstory of inspiration and strength. And I can see where you would be a hope to so many people. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to say what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Awesome. Anytime. Once again, I'm Billy Dees. Thank you very much for checking out our podcast, and we'll talk to you again next week. Well, hello everyone. I am Billy Dees from the self-titled Billy Dees Podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.